Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Wisdom Chat. I'm Phil Holdsworth of Aurum Gold, and my guest today is Michelle Keogh. Hi there, Michelle.
Good morning. Nice to see you. Good evening, actually, isn't it today?
Whatever time of the day it is. Michelle's founder of Leaf Organics and also a CBD expert. Michelle, tell us a little bit about your business and then tell us a little bit about what is a CBD expert.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on today, Phil. CBD is, or my company, and we sell CBD products which actually come from the cannabis plant, but it will not get you high. So it's totally legal. I've actually just been signed off for the novel food license that my products are all compliant, they're following all correct legislation, which was a real big kudos for me, to show that what I am doing is correct and proper, and as a consumer you're protected. So I sell CBD products, everything from oil to topical products, and my job as an expert is to find out more about the person and what they're looking at CBD to help them with, and match best product with correct way of taking it, to help them get some relief. And CBD, it's not just all smoke and mirrors. There is actually some science behind and shows that it actually does work with your body and mind.
That's brilliant, and I know in terms of things like when we talk about money, we talk about people who are experiencing anxiety around money for all manner of reasons, and that sort of spilling over into challenging them around the area of sleep. And I often say to people, if you're not in the right place, if you're not in the right frame of mind, if you're feeling anxious, don't make life choices at that point, especially around money, but any aspect of life, because as we often say, 80% of the decisions that we make tend to be emotional and only 20% are rational and logic. And it's important that people are able to make informed choices. So just tell me then, with regards to things like sleep and reducing anxiety, one, how does it do that, and two, why those particular areas? What are you coming across?
So you've hit the nail on the head. A couple of the main reasons that people come to me is because of anxiety and sleep, and I'm not sure which one creates worse. We all know that, like you just said, anxiety makes the sleep pattern worse, and we also know if you don't sleep well, your anxiety is worse. So there is a vicious circle. So how CBD works, I'll try and keep it as simple as I can. We all, or every mammal, has an endocannabinoid system. We naturally produce cannabinoids in our body. We have these receptors that receive the messages from these cannabinoids, and we have enzymes that once the cannabinoid has sent the message to the receptor, the enzyme then gets rid of that cannabinoid to allow it to go, thank you very much, you've done your job and you've told my body what to do. I describe it a bit like the conductor of the band. The endocannabinoid system is involved in every chemical process, every reaction going on in your body. And what tends to happen as we age, we have environmental stress factors and things like that, that system doesn't work as clearly as it should do. And I describe it a bit like, it's a bit like a foggy day. So that's what can happen. It gets a little bit foggy and you can't see the traffic lights, you can't see what happens. So sometimes our body overproduces certain chemicals, it underproduces them. And we start to get symptoms of ill health. And that's probably the simplest way of explaining. So CBD has found to replicate on natural cannabinoids. So it's almost like topping up the cannabinoids, so there's more in there. It makes the receptors more receptive. And what we do know, one of the main things that helps with anxiety, it stops a certain enzyme gobbling up one of the cannabinoids that we produce called anandamide even, which is known as the bliss molecule. That's the one that makes you feel happy and healthy. And CBD stops the enzyme FAAH gobbling this bliss molecule up, so it stays in your system longer. So when you add your CBD, a lot of people refer to this feeling of well-being. So that's one of the scientific ways. What we also know, it helps on a longer term basis. It helps improve your dopamine and serotonin production. And we also know it puts you in this calmer state of mind. So we know that aids to sleep and also helps your sleep-wake cycle. So it doesn't sedate you like a sleeping tablet would. what it
Right.
does do, it makes your body produce the right cortisol levels in the morning and the right melatonin levels at night. So you therefore end up getting a more natural sleep. And therefore, we know as you sleep better, your body recovers and repairs and helps reduce anxiety. So that's a very short way of explaining it. There is a little bit more science behind it, but there is science there to show that it does help with those two areas.
I'm sure our listeners would very much appreciate that description that you've given us, and we know that it's a big issue with regards to how some of these things that we face, such as anxiety and sleeplessness, sort of eating disorders, gut problems, and even the cardiovascular side in terms of just sort of, I don't know, heartbeats racing or whatever.
Stress is just, I mean, that's why I set
Oh,
my company up. I used to
yeah,
struggle really badly with anxiety. It was life altering for me. And you're quite right, the physiological symptoms with stress,
yeah,
and they've shown it increases your pain perception when you're stressed. We know
yeah,
that your body's only grabbing the right amount of sleep. Your cortisol levels are higher. We know that increases your inflammation, and it has an impact throughout your whole brain and body. And
yeah,
unless and I'm still a great believer, you need to get to the root cause of what is causing that stress and all the sleeplessness. But all these things that we're adding in, whether it be CBD or meditation, acupuncture, healthy eating, coming to see somebody like you to help with a money mindset, all of those things add to helping your brain and body calm, relax, and then
yeah.
thrive.
Yeah, you're right, and to actually see people have for themselves a sort of light bulb moments where they realise, say for example, the facts of a situation.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting, just talking about facts. When you're making irrational decisions, oftentimes it's not necessarily based on the facts as we know it. It's based on your perception of what's going on around you, life around you.
Absolutely.
In neurolinguistic programming, they say that the map is not the world. The map being what you conjure in your mind, but it's not actually the true world around you. And I often say to people when they're anxious about things or they have certain beliefs, like for example, oh, I'm bad with money. Let's examine the facts. So let's not go down the emotional route. Well, let's look at the facts. And I liken it to people who drive. And many of our listeners will probably think, I drive. But have you driven down a particular road where you seem to feel always that the lights are at red when you drive down that road? And yet you miss the green lights. It's called confirmation bias. We're only looking for the evidence of that substantiates our belief.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's interesting, you're quite right. I remember
yeah,
my son, he had an issue at school where he was, he thought the whole world was against him. The whole class is having a go at me. And I said, next time you go into class and you think that, have a look round, who is being mean? And actually it was 2 or 3 people, but he assumed because of this, he thought it was the whole 30 kids in the class.
yeah,
And it's
yeah.
only when he looked back, and you're quite right, that's you
I
do.
could think. Yeah, I could think for myself when I go to give presentations or talks. I get quite nervous beforehand, and people will probably look at me and say, "Oh, you seem quite calm and chilled." And it's a little bit like that swan, gliding gracefully across the top of the water, but you can't see how frantic it's paddling underneath.
That's like me before a race. Everybody thinks I'm dead calm. No, I'm really quiet. And if I'm quiet, I'm like a child. That's when you worry.
Well, certainly in terms of putting yourself in a place where you can think calmly and rationally, you've got to do the things that are right for you to get you to that place. Now, if you don't know, for anybody who's listening, obviously there are things such as what you provide, Michelle, but also I think the guidance around it that you give, I think is equally as important. But also for individuals who, just simple breathing exercises at times, and
yeah. And I say this, I always describe, and I don't like to use the word alternative therapies. I just like to
no,
see, it's anything that isn't drugs really, and
Yes.
or medication. And I describe it like, do you remember the Goonies, where at the end of the adventure they found a big treasure chest and there was all that treasure in it, and there was rings and there was bracelets and necklaces, and everyone grabbed the bits that they like. And I describe alternative therapies as that you go in the Goonie box with all the treasure, and then you find, oh, I'm going to try a bit of Reiki. Yeah, I like that. I'm going to go and try mindfulness. That's not for me. I'm going to try a bit of CBD. Oh, I like that. And you go around and you try all these bits that work. CBD is not a one-trick pony. It's as well as. And I get clients coming to me and we talk about how it potentially can help. And I give them as much information as they can so they can make an informed decision. But what I also do is guide them to people and experts like yourselves. They may need to go for, cognitive therapy. They may need to go and see the doctor. Sometimes, do not rule the doctor out. And, but it's about guiding them to the right thing so that they can get a whole fix, not just a one-trick pony, if that makes sense. No, and that's definitely why I set my company up, because it was the ethics. I felt some CBD companies were selling it as this will fix the world. Well, no, it's got some great healing potentials, but it's not a miracle cure.
Yeah. Well, it's the same even in the the financial well-being world. It's understanding. Do you know? I don't know if you know this, Michelle, but less than 50% of the working population have any kind of financial plan. And when I've looked at it and questioned people about it, one thing that really struck me was people's responses were quite negative regarding planning. So you use the word budget, and people immediately think of restrictions, cutbacks, can't haves, and there are all these negative connotations. But then you throw in the mix this notion of, I'm bad with money, or whatever these negative beliefs are for some people, that you begin to realize why somebody doesn't want to go there and do the planning, because it just causes anxiety in them. However, one of the proven facts about planning is the fact that it does actually reduce stress. But you're right about it's not the only way forward. It's one of the things. We need to do it, but there are other things that we need to do to take care of ourselves. And if you don't mind, I'd just like to come to something. I would call it extreme running. Now, you're a very fit person. You like your physical well-being, and we've been talking a little bit, haven't we, before this episode about your extreme running. Now, tell me a little bit about this extreme running. I mean, this is your go-to place sometimes,
this is my happy place. Well, it's part of my therapy. It's where I'm happiest the most. And so I am an obstacle course racer. I run all over the country and the world, and it involves running ridiculous, sometimes very short distances and sometimes very long distances, in sort of trail running. But then you get to climb over things, climb up things, carry things, go through mud, get chucked in puddle. Well, I say puddles, they're normally lakes, very cold ones. And it's interesting you talk about the planning. For me to rock up to a race, I have had to have planned out the last 6 months of training to get me to that point. And it doesn't always go according to plan, but at least you rock up on the start line and you go, right, I've done all my planning that I needed to do. I can't do any more. And I think that also relates back to the finance. I mean, we were laughing, me and my husband, we do at the end of year, we do a personal assessment of our wealth, because sometimes you feel like you're working and you're paying all these things out. But actually, if you assess what all those things are worth, your house, you might have an expensive car, you might have an expensive watch or something like that. And actually, if you assess how much all those things are, you've got your personal balance sheet. We do it with business. Why don't we do it with our personal wealth? Same with your fitness. You have a personal fitness plan, which allows you to do what you need to do. And I just think planning is hard, and it gives you the confidence. So I know, going back to my racing, I know I've done my planning, so it gives me the confidence when I'm on the start line that I've done as much as I physically possibly can do. And the same with your finance. If you've planned, you know where you're at. So that in itself, everybody says, if you know where you're going, you don't have to, it's always the unknown that I think people worry about.
Yeah, it is, you're right. And it's interesting as well. If you were to start, any of us were to start on a journey anywhere, we'd need to know where we were starting from. How can we plan a journey unless we know the starting point? and whether that's doing a race. I did the London Marathon many years ago, and all my planning leading up to it was both in terms of can I do the distance, in which case finding my pace.
Mm-hmm.
What was my pace, not everybody else's pace.
Your
and I was very much aware that some people would set off absolutely helter-skelter, and I thought, no, I've got to keep to my pace.
And that's a really difficult lesson too. So I know with my coach, we all talk about benchmarking. So every 12 weeks we benchmark. Where are we at? Are we? And the same with finance. Benchmark, where are you at? Have a look at where you're at. And then you tweak it accordingly. So right, we need to work on your speed work a bit more. We need to work on your strength. But unless you know where you're at, you're never gonna, and however, I must laugh because I am an ex-sprinter. So, an ex-sprinter, we have to run really, really fast over 200 meters. And at 200 meters, then you're like, oh, I'm broken now. And I still have to remember that. So while like my race on Saturday is 21 kilometers, I cannot get out of the habit of going off like a bull in a china shop, literally. Wow, out, and then I go, oh, this is a bit embarrassing. I've got to keep this up now till at least I've got round the corner, and then I can slow down a bit.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? The analogies that we have here, and yet everything is so intrinsically linked. When it comes to sort of personal well-being, there's a recognition that you cannot divide us up into component parts and treat those parts separately. So the emotional, psychological, the physical, the financial, the social elements are all intrinsic to one another. And if one is suffering, all of them suffer.
I mean, I always put mine back to racing because I've been coached from being a very young age, and a lot of the training and analogies that we use then I've put into business as well. Stick in your own lane. Don't worry about what other people are doing. If you are running forward, if you turn your head to see what everybody else is doing, you'll run slower. But if you're also, your brain's not, your body may be absolutely tuned to perfection, but if your mind is not there, you'll never get there. And otherwise, sometimes my training can be under par, but if my brain is telling me I'm going to win, I usually always do. And that's the same with every aspect of your life. If you go in with a positive mindset, knowing that you've done is the best you can do, and you know what, I'm never going to be, if you start making a comparison, there's always going to be somebody fitter, stronger, faster, with a better business, with more money than me. There's also going to be people at the opposite end. And I think it's being happy with your lot but finding that peace in any way that you find it, really. Definitely.
And I think comparison, as you alluded to there, is a killer of all things. The moment we start to compare ourselves one with another, we've lost. And I often say to people, when you've got, say, for example, couples where there's a lot of stress and anxiety and conflict around money, where one could be saying, why can't you be just more like me? And the answer is that we could never be more like each other because we are unique individuals. However, it's understanding yourself before you can then start to understand others. And once you are in that place, then you can reduce conflict. But we kind of digress.
Sorry,
here.
I'm kind of all over, aren't I?
No. Sorry, it was me. Michelle, time has passed us by. It's been wonderful chatting to you. All the best for Saturday in your race. I know I know you love it, but at the same time, it's still going to take something from you in terms of the effort and
mentally and physically. I'll be broken on Sunday.
Well, have a good rest afterwards at least. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak with us and tell us a little bit about your business and about CBD and the benefits there. And I take on board what you said about, it's one of many solutions, and it can be a combination of things that people can use, both to, by reducing their anxiety, they're able to make better informed choices in life.
Absolutely.
And we know that to be the case. So, Michelle, thank you very much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, and hopefully we might get to speak to you again in the not too distant future.
I would love that. Thanks for having me on, Phil.
Okay, take care.